Hi, Amy of Fashion Toppings and AJ's Vintage Designs here, and I'm doing a little redo video. I had a video up that was about ironing, using an iron to do decoupage, and there was a lot of questions. I made some corrections in there, so I just decided to go ahead and redo the video and answer everybody's questions and make it easier. And I'm using several different mediums, which is gonna help answer a lot of your questions. I'll be using napkins, tissue paper, and fabric on this video. So I'll be covering all three of those when it comes to decoupage and using the ironing method, which is my favorite. There's a lot of methods out there, but this one happens to be my favorite. Okay, so the first thing is I am working with a raw pine board. See, it's just these cheapy little signs from Walmart, cost $4.97. And one thing you need to do is you want to put either a primer down. If you can see a lot of grains in it, you're gonna wanna put a primer down just so that if that wood that you're using, those grains, you don't want that tannin to bleed through whatever fabric, tissue paper, or napkins you're using. Doesn't have much for grains at all, and it's just a cheapy little board, so I'm not worried about it. So I just put a coat of Dixie Belle's white paint, which is called cotton. And if I accidentally say cotton throughout this video, just know the cotton refers to the color white paint from Dixie Belle. I've been using their paint for so long, it's just a habit that I call it by its name. Its name is cotton, and it's a white. So it's Dixie Belle's whitest white. You can use whatever color you want. However, keep in mind when you're decoupaging, whatever color is underneath your napkin, tissue paper, or fabric, it could show through. So I am usually doing a white, a tan, or a cream underneath wherever I'm gonna be decoupaging. That way there's no colors gonna be bleeding through or showing through when my decoupage, when you get it wet and you put your, I'm gonna be using the top coat to use for my decoupage medium. But when you put that on, you know, when you get tissue paper wet, it turns see-through. You can see what's underneath it. So you wanna make sure that you have a white, cream, tan, a light color underneath so that when it gets wet and it shows through your fabric, tissue paper, or napkin, that it's not gonna distract. So I'm using white cotton. And I've already got a coat on there. I'm just waiting for it to dry, and we're gonna move on to the next step. We're gonna be using parchment paper, an iron, and if I refer to gator hide is Dixie Belle's top coat. It's their toughest top coat. You can use any top coat from Dixie Belle, and I know you're gonna ask me if you can use other brands. You'll just have to experiment and try. I only use Dixie Belle products, so I can only vouch for Dixie Belle's, how well it performs. And so I use Dixie Belle's top coat. This is their toughest top coat. It's called Gator Hide. It's a waterproof, water repellent, but you can use any one of their regular top coat sealers. And another question that came up is, what is a top coat? A top coat is what you put over your paint to protect it and make it last. It's a sealer. So you can use a flat satin gloss top coat, and this is the strongest top coat, which is Gator Hide. And I'm only doing this because I'm the sign, you know, I might be putting the sign outside. I don't know yet, so I just use Gator Hide because I don't know where I'm gonna be putting it. So Gator Hide is waterproof, water repellent, but that is not why I'm using it for the decoupaging. You can use any of the top coats from Dixie Belle and they'll all work. Okay, so I got that. So this is just about dry. I'll be back when it's dried and we'll go to the next step. Okay, now the next step. My paint is dry, and like I said, I use white. I'm gonna be using Dixie Belle's top coat sealer, and it's called Gator Hide. So I'll be using that. I'm gonna pour some of it just into a little bowl. And I'm just gonna use a sponge applicator just to get it on here. And I'm gonna apply it liberally all over the surface. Okay, then I'm gonna let this dry. And then after it's dried, I'll come back and I'll put another coat on here. Now the 2 coats is not necessary. I just like to do it just to be safe in case I've missed any area. Because if you miss an area, then there's no, when we heat this up with an iron, it's gonna reactivate and kind of turn into a glue. And if you happen to have missed an area, guess what? There's nothing to heat up and activate and act like glue. You'll have a spot that isn't decoupaged. So I like to do 2 coats just to be safe in case because if, you know, clear coats are clear. You can see in the angle that it's wet, but you might accidentally miss and forget a spot or miss a spot, and then when you go to put fabric on it or your tissue paper or napkins, then it won't stick. So I put one coat on, I let it dry, and then I'm gonna put a second coat on just so that I know that I hit all the spots. So let me go ahead and get my 2 coats on. Put 1 coat on, it'll take probably half hour to dry, and then I'll put the second coat on, and we'll be ready to go to the next step. Okay, so I have 2 layers of my top coat sealer on here, and I have my parchment paper. Let's go ahead and do the fabric one first. Now, I'm gonna be using just a regular cotton fabric. Well, actually, this is like an upholstery fabric. This is a strong fabric. It's an upholstery fabric I just used for some dining room chairs. And I'm gonna place it on my board. I'm gonna go ahead and aim you down so you can see what I'm doing. So I've got my fabric. I'm just gonna go ahead and lay it down. I'm gonna, right there. And if you make it a little big, that's okay, because we can trim it down with a little razor knife or scissors after we're done. So I'm just laying it there. See, it's not sticking. My top coat is dry. I'm gonna lay it there. And I have my little iron heated up. Now, if your board is rough, you're gonna wanna sand it first. I forgot to tell you that. You might wanna sand it if you have any rough bumps and chips or chunks of wood. Make sure you sand it so you're working with a smooth surface. Okay, so now, my little cheap iron doesn't get very hot, so it's gonna show you just how well this process works, because the iron does not get that hot. Okay, I put my parchment paper down, and I'm ironing over the fabric. Now what this is doing is the heat from the iron is reactivating the top coat, which is underneath the fabric that we put 2 coats of. It's reactivating that. Heating it up is gonna reactivate it, make it damp, and turn it into like a glue. And the great thing about this is usually when you're decoupaging, your surface is wet, so when you lay down your fabric or your tissue paper or your napkins, when you lay it down, it sticks immediately and it's hard to move. This is nice because you can place your fabric down and move it around without it getting wet in a top coat or your decoupage medium. Okay, so I'm heating this up, and it's reactivating that top coat underneath our fabric. I'm just keeping my iron moving and being firm. Now, if you don't have a little craft iron like mine, that's okay. You can use any iron. You just want to make sure that you turn the steam setting off. You can put it on the cotton setting or the polyester setting, and you can adjust the heat based on, you know, whatever you're getting the best results on. This, I think, only gets to like 250 degrees. But make sure you turn the steam off. You do not want the steam setting to be on. And I know several of you are gonna ask where I got this little iron at. I got this at the end of an aisle. The little discount aisles at, I think it was either Joann Fabrics or Michael's Craft Store, but it's just a cheapy little $3 or $5 iron I got several years ago. Never used it. It's just been sitting in my cabinet until I came across this method. Royce Treasures, who sells tissue papers, she's the one that I learned how to do this from. Can we see? Oh, see, it's already stuck. This is great for doing drawer fronts, the sides of your drawers, inside drawers. I mean, this can be done for so many projects, and I get a perfect outcome every time I've done this so far. My last video, which this is replacing my last video, I did a gorgeous plaque using tissue paper. Okay, let me show you. Okay, so now, look at the fabric is on there, and look at how smooth it is. But you wouldn't want to leave it this way. You could, but it's not protected. So your fabric is raw, and so if someone spills on it or anything like that, you want to be able to protect this. So we're gonna put another coat of gator hide on here, or top coat, your top coat sealer. Gator hide is a water-based sealer. So I'm gonna put another layer on top of here. Okay, so I'm gonna let that dry and let's move on to the next. Okay, let's do napkins. Now with napkins, I don't wanna get this wet. With napkins, they come in plies. You'll hear referred to as a 2-ply napkin, a 3-ply napkin. Here we go. This has 2 layers. You take a corner and peel it apart and remove the layers. One layer is plain, has no picture on it. The other layer has your image on it. Okay. We don't have to worry about like clean edges because I'll sand those later. Let me put another flower at the other end. Okay. So, just laying some flowers down. Those are the napkins, just laying them down. And now I'm gonna put my parchment paper back on top. I'm gonna iron those. I want you to see napkins, fabrics, and tissue paper. Those are the 3 that I get the most questions about. And so I'm doing all 3 on this board so you can see the results of all 3. Okay, make sure you get all of your edges. And what the parchment paper is for is so that you don't leave burn marks on your paper because your paper could be delicate. And you don't want to get that top coat glue when you heat it up. You don't want to get that on your iron. So the parchment paper is just to protect your iron. Let me see if I got it. Feels like I got all of it. Okay. See? See how smooth that is? Okay, and I will sand off all these edges with a fingernail file to make them nice and smooth. Okay, so the next one is, so we got 2 of them. The next one's gonna be tissue paper. Okay, now the important thing about tissue paper is, this is Decoupage tissue paper. This is one of my favorites. I hate even using this on a sample board, but I wanna show you guys. This is French script, and I bought it from a Zazzle shop. It's under Royce Treasures. I buy it from her because she has a huge selection and is gorgeous. So I'm gonna cut off just a little strip of this. And this is not 2-ply. I don't have to separate it. You just use the tissue paper. And you do not want to use gift wrapping tissue paper because gift wrapping tissue paper is going to bleed. And what I mean by bleed is that the inks, it's cheap. It's meant just for one-time use, wrapping a gift and people throw it away. So they don't spend a lot of money on good quality inks. So gift wrapping tissue paper will bleed. Some won't, but most will. They're gonna bleed and the inks will just run. And so I recommend, if you're gonna use tissue paper, that you use tissue paper that's meant for decoupaging. And it'll say decoupaging. If you go to a site like Etsy or, like I said, Royce Treasures site, if you go to her site, they're decoupaging papers. They're specifically made for decoupaging. Okay, so I've got the tissue paper down. I can lift it up, I can set it down, but this is tissue paper with a little French script on it. I'm just line it up, and I'll worry about my edges later. I'll get some sandpaper or a fingernail file to get in between and take care of that. Down goes my parchment paper. Oopsie. It moved. I moved too quickly and the wind from setting this up moved it. Okay, there we go. And repeat the process again. Okay. Now, see I've got this paper. Let me show this. See I have all this excess paper? You can take sandpaper and just run sandpaper down the edge and it will remove that paper. So you get a nice smooth edge without using scissors. And I can do that to this side too. Just run sandpaper down my edge. And now I have a perfect, look at perfect edge and no scissor needed. Okay, so you can, that's what you can use the sandpaper for. And then in between here, if you can't get the sandpaper between there, use a sheet of sandpaper. Slide a sheet between here or use a fingernail file. Isn't that looking cool so far? Okay. Okay, so while we're letting this is the fabric one. I just turned it around to put it back so you can remember. Okay, so now we have the fabric over here, it's drying. I'm gonna put another top coat on top of these, so they can be drying while we're working on the fabric. Now, when you put on the top coat on the papers, you might get some bubbling. Gotta be very gentle. You will get some bubbling. Don't panic. That will go away for the most part when it dries. It's gonna bubble up and then it's gonna dry and it's gonna shrink back down. It's just the fibers stretching from taking the water, the liquid from the top coat in. So you're gonna see, and I'm gonna show you the bubbles here in just a second. And then I'm gonna show you later how, and you're gonna watch how the bubbles will disappear. So, getting bubbles, which is a good thing because I wanna show you that you don't have to like panic when you get bubbles. Okay? And you're being very gentle. Never mind. Okay, so I've got bubbles. Let me show you the bubbles. Okay, I just want to show you, okay, can you see the bubbles? I've got bubbles. I know I've got bubbles on here. Just got to get to an angle where you can see bubbles. There is some tiny bubbles. There is some tiny bubbles right along this ridge right here. Right here along this ridge, there's some bubbles just along the ridge there. Okay, so now I'm gonna let this dry, and there is bubbles, but I'm not worried about it. The bubbles, they scare you, they dry, they go away. So hold on. Set to the side so I can let that dry. Let's do the fabric. We already put our top coat on top of the fabric and it's already dry. And if I had bubbles, I don't have to do this step, but if I had bubbles, I would put the parchment paper back on it and iron the bubbles out. They'll go away. Fabric is very friendly when it comes to doing decoupage because the weave breathes, and so the air, when you're, you know, as far as bubbles, it can push out throughout the weave of the fabric. So fabric is actually one of my favorite decoupage mediums. My corner was wet. It wasn't dry yet. So it stuck to the parchment paper. You gotta be completely dry before you can iron on top of it. So that corner I know is not dry yet, so I'm not gonna go up there, over to that corner over there. You want your fabric to be dry before you do this step. Okay. Okay. So the fabric one, other than this corner, it's still wet. The fabric, look at that, is beautiful. No wrinkles, no creases, no bubbles. Okay, now we're gonna let this dry, we're gonna iron this, and then I'm gonna show you this when I do the next step and how the bubbles will disappear. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, so as you can see, look at how perfect the fabric one turned out. These have some wrinkles on, just this one edge here has some wrinkles, and this one edge right here has some wrinkles. And they're not nearly as bad as they were when they were wet, but we're gonna get rid of those. We're gonna make this perfectly smooth. We're going to iron again. Okay, we're gonna put our parchment paper down. I'm gonna do both of them at the same time. Put the parchment paper down, and I'm just gonna iron back over all those surfaces. And it's gonna take all those wrinkles out. You can kind of do it in a circular motion, so you're kind of pushing the edges down flat. Make sure you get right to the edge too. That's one spot where you wanna make sure that's secure, because if you have an edge of a napkin or tissue paper or fabric, an edge that's not completely adhered down, if you get something caught underneath it and pulls it up, it'll pull and tear the fabric or tear the tissue. You wanna make sure you get your edges really, really well. For areas that need to be cut or you have excess paper, I'm taking a fingernail file and just pushing it down and trimming off the edges. Okay, and that is it. Look at decoupage. See any wrinkles? You got your fabric. Nice. Get your fabric. Get your napkins. And you have your tissue paper. As easy as that. I'm trying to get you to see it from all angles. Love it. Okay, so quick recap. One, you want to prime your boards so that you don't have any bleed through if you have grains on your wood, or you want to at least have a base coat on raw wood. You don't want to decoupage right on raw wood unless that's the look you're looking for. But I always put a base coat down, 1 or 2 coats, and you need to use a coat lighter than what you are decoupaging, because once it gets wet, your paper will turn see-through and you'll see what's underneath. So keep that in mind when you're picking out your color. I usually stick with a white, beige, or very light gray. Third, let that all dry. We'll let your paint dry, then put 2 coats of your top coat on. 1 coat, let it dry, 2nd coat, let it dry. Then after your top coats, your sealer has dried, you can put your napkin, tissue paper, fabric, or wrapping paper, whatever you're using for decoupage. You put that down. It's not gonna stick because your top coat is dry. You put that down, put your parchment paper on top of it, and iron. It's gonna reactivate the top coat that's underneath. It's gonna reactivate that, and your paper will stick. So you wanna iron it really good. Make sure everything is locked down on top of that sealer. Next, so you let that dry. You iron it, then you go ahead and you put another coat of top coat, your sealer, whatever sealer you're using, you put that on top again. Then you might see bubbling, you might see wrinkling happen at this point. When it gets wet, it's gonna wanna bubble in some areas. That's okay, because when it dries, it will calm down. Don't worry, it will calm down. So make sure you have a full top coat on top of your fabric, napkin, or tissue paper. Let it dry. You might still have some wrinkles. That's okay. Make sure it's completely dry. Don't rush this process. Then put your parchment paper back down and iron it again to get that smooth final result after everything's dried. And then you are done. That's all there is to it. And I just showed you fabric, napkin, tissue paper. All of them. Look at smooth, smooth, smooth. Okay. So there we go. If you have any questions, go ahead and let me know. I will do my best to get back to you in a timely manner. I do get a lot of comments and I do have a lot of videos. So sometimes it does take me some time to get back to you, but I do my best. Okay, well, this is Amy with Fashion Toppings and AJ's Vintage Designs with a ironing method decoupage redo. Until next time, I hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.